Welcome back to my YouTube channel. We're going to be talking about the Greek culture that developed after the Mycenaean culture was destroyed by the Dorians. An effect of the Dorians coming in from the north and coming into the Greek mainland and conquering the Mycenaeans is it ushered in a period of time known as the Dark Age of Greece. And we've kind of highlighted this period of time, and the number one reason that we call it a dark age is because literacy was lost. Literacy is a fancy way of saying no one could read and write. So the ability to read and write and communicate through the written language and the ability to read the written language was lost. And of course, when that happens, inevitably other skills, important skills, are lost too. And so the culture of the Greek mainland did go into a dark age, and this dark age lasted for a considerable period of time. Now, their traditions and their culture was somewhat kept alive by singing storytellers. And these singing storytellers were known by the term of bard. So a bard would come into your village or would live in your village, someone generally older, and they would be aware of the traditions that had been in your city or in your area, and they would sing those. People would actually pay them to come and sing to gatherings. And in those songs would be poems of their culture and of their past, and to keep them grounded in trying to help them remember. Memory is such a powerful part of our culture, to have memories and to remember what it was like in the past to help shape our future. So the singing storytellers, known as bards, were very, very important in helping to keep this culture on life support. When the Mycenaeans were invaded by the Dorians, many Greeks who had access to ships saw what was coming and realized they needed to get off the Greek mainland and get to the safety of other areas where other Greek speakers were. We refer to these Greeks, refugees who got off the Greek mainland, as the Ionian Greeks. As I pull my map down here, you can see that Greece, there's a small body of water that separates what is now modern-day Turkey and modern-day Greece. And this body, this arm of the Mediterranean Sea, this body of water is known as the Aegean Sea. And many of the Greeks who had access to ships got off the Greek mainland and got into the islands of the Aegean Sea, and some came all the way over into the western coast of what is now Turkey. And it was simply referred to back in those days as Ionia. These Ionian Greeks took their culture with them. Culture travels. When I get on a plane or I get on a car and I go somewhere else, I take my culture with me, my ability to read, my ability to write, my religious beliefs, all right, the important parts of my life strategy and of my culture, I carry them with me. The Ionian Greeks kept these parts of their culture, and after things had settled down on the mainland, many of these refugees decided it was time to come back to the Greek mainland, and they began to do that. And as we refer to them as the Ionian Greeks, brought Greek culture back to the mainland and helped to end the Greek Dark Ages. They brought back the alphabet. And of course, the Greeks had developed their own alphabet, and they borrowed their alphabet from the Phoenicians. And of course, our alphabet that you and I are using still today is the Roman alphabet. But the Roman alphabet came as a direct consequence from the Romans coming in contact with the Greeks. For example, the first letter in the Roman alphabet is the letter A. The first letter in the Greek alphabet is simply known as alpha, and it looks like that. So you can see that alphabets are closely related. The Greek alphabet brought back into the Greek mainland by the Ionian Greeks, borrowed and taken from the Phoenicians, helped to reintroduce literacy and reading and writing, and a new culture develops on the mainland, and we refer to it as Hellenic culture. And it is Hellenic culture that will bring the golden age of Greece, where all of their philosophies, their forms of government like democracy, which we borrow, come and flourish and become the cradle of Western civilization. Another important part of Hellenic culture is the city-states develop. A city-state, also known by the Greek word polis. All right? So American cities that might be reminiscence of you that you might remember. How about Minneapolis? A large city in Minnesota. How about Indianapolis? A large city in Indiana. The word polis, if you look for it, you can find it in many cities. Home of the United States Naval Academy. Annapolis in Maryland. Some other key words that come from this, from polis. How about the word police? Is an English word that comes from the Greek word polis, meaning city-state. City-states develop, and within these cities, the concept of democracy, the men of those cities regarding each other as equal citizens, implementing voting and self-expression and self-government, which will eventually lead to the concept of democracy, all become part of the Hellenic culture that is reintroduced back onto the Greek mainland. Of course, reading and writing and books are also a huge part of culture. And in the Hellenic culture, it was no different. And the texts of Greek culture are the two famous epic poems by the author Homer, the Iliad and the Odyssey. And of course, the Iliad and the Odyssey refer to the Trojan War, which lasted 10 years, and the return home after the war. Homer wrote these in 800 BC. Most people believe that they were written around that time. And they are the texts of Greek culture and Western civilization. They are the first great epic books of all of the West. Of course, without going into a tremendous amount of detail on the Trojan War, a Trojan group of a royal family comes into the Greek mainland to do trade with the Mycenaeans. While they're there, a beautiful woman known as Helen of Troy, who was the wife of a Trojan prince, falls in love with a Mycenaean prince. And the Mycenaean prince ends up taking her, and they end up back in Troy. And of course, the Mycenaeans are upset because Helen of Troy has been kidnapped, if you will, but she goes of her own accord. But they don't know that, and they don't believe that. And so to get her back, they go and begin a massive siege of the ancient city of Troy. And the Iliad documents that great battle between the Mycenaean Greeks and the Trojans that were defending their city. And of course, one of the great Mycenaean warriors, Odysseus, all right, he survives the war, and then trying to get home back to his family in Greece, all of their adventures are documented in the Odyssey. So, written by Homer, who many claim to be blind, but those are mythical descriptions of Homer. These books were not only highly prized in homes, but in their schools. And they were the textbooks of their schools. And this is the beginning of Hellenic culture and the flowering of Greek civilization. Part of Greek civilization that I want to take a little time with you now is their religious beliefs. And a major part of any culture is the culture that brings out worship and what people worship. The ancient Greeks had a polytheistic religion. Which most every other ancient civilization had as well. Being polytheistic didn't make them unique. What makes Greek religion unique is that they do worship many, many gods and goddesses. However, in the Greek culture, their gods and goddesses took on human form. And this was very unique to the Greeks. Most religions believed in and related their gods and goddesses to nature. The Greeks put them as humans, in human form, and in a family unit. And also another major cultural change. Gods look like us, and they live in the family unit. What does that say about the family unit is important in the Greek society and Greek culture? Family was very important because if the gods and the goddesses lived in a family unit, families of us regular humans also took on a form of godliness by living together and loving and raising our children. So the family was very important to the ancient Greeks because the gods and goddesses lived it. The gods and goddesses represented both nature and human attributes. This is another unique philosophy and cultural religious belief that the ancient Greeks had. Here again, most ancient civilizations, the gods and goddesses did not have many human attributes. They were natural phenomena, like the moon, the sun, the wind, rain, the rivers. In this case, Greek gods and goddesses controlled those parts too, but they also had human attributes. And another unique part of Greek culture, Hellenic culture if you will, was that every 4 years, to honor their gods and their goddesses, they held athletic competitions at the holy city of Olympus, or Olympia, which was at the base of the large Mount Olympus, one of the high mountains on the mainland of Greece, almost 10,000 feet high. And that's where the Greeks believed that the gods and goddesses lived. So at the base of that mountain, at the holy city of Olympia, they would do these every 4 year athletic competitions to honor the gods and goddesses. A unique mixture of sport and worship rituals, combining athletic competition with religious worship. Very unique to the Greeks. The word Olympic is something we still do. We talk about the cradle of Western civilization. Every 4 years, we have Olympics. Guess what? This year, because of COVID, instead of being able to do it in the year 2020, last summer like it was supposed to, we're hopefully going to have the Olympics this year in the summer of 2021. We still carry on so many of these ancient Greek traditions, the Olympics just being one of them. And finally, just to highlight some of the very important gods and goddesses in the pantheon of Greek religion. The chief god, Zeus. Zeus was in charge of the sky and the weather and thunderstorms, and he is the chief god of this family of goddesses and gods. His daughter Athena, as we mentioned, some of these gods and goddesses had human attributes. She is the god of wisdom and art and the patron god of the Greek city Athens. Her beautiful temple, which still stands today on a hill overlooking Athens, is simply known as the Parthenon. And it still stands today and is the building that the Abraham Lincoln Memorial is built after. Demeter, the deity over agriculture and farming. Aphrodite, the deity over love and beauty. Apollo, the god of prophecy and light. And Dionysius, the god and goddess, the deity of wine. We tells you how important wine and alcohol from their grape vineyards was, and sexuality. They're very important in their culture. So this is an overview of what was happening on the Greek mainland following the Mycenaeans being conquered by the Dorians. The Ionian Greek refugees were able to get off the mainland to safety. They kept the skills and the crafts of the culture. Eventually, when it was safe, they came back, reintroduced skills and crafts and culture, especially the alphabet and literacy, the ability to read and write. Hellenic culture develops, city-states develop, and then, of course, the important impact of Homer's Iliad and Odyssey and their religious beliefs, with gods and goddesses taking on human form, living in a family unit. You cannot underestimate the power that has had on Western culture, of which you and I are a part of in the year 2020. And of course, the Olympics, a unique mixture of competition with religion, and then just a short list of some of the primary gods and goddesses of their religion. Appreciate you joining me today, and as always, wear your mask.